The man in the suit stepped up on the podium, and the elderly woman sat down in one of the four chairs. The couple stayed back, but they did not sit. Shirley knew they must have been Michael's parents, but she did not recognize them. When she was young, they had just been parents, a species that was, for the most part, unremarkable. She realized suddenly that she didn't even know their names. Michael's parents had not gone out of their way to interact with their son's friends, and Charlie had literally spoken to them as Michael's mom and Michael's dad, as if those are appropriate forms of address. The man at the podium introduced himself as the school's principal. He had a few things about loss and community and the fleeting persistence of youth. He talked briefly about Michael's kindness, his artistic talent, and the impression he made, even as a small child, on everyone he met. It was true. Charlie reflected. Michael had been an unusual, charismatic child. He wasn't exactly a leader, but they all found themselves wanting to please him, to make him smile, and so often they did the things they knew he wanted to do just to make him happy. The principal finished and introduced Michael's parents, Joan and Donald Brooks. They stood at the podium awkwardly, each looking from face to face in the crowd as if they were not sure how they had gotten there. Finally, Joan stepped forward. "It feels strange to be up here," was the first thing she said, and a murmur of something like agreement swept quietly through the crowd. "We are so grateful to all of you for coming, especially those of you who came from out of the town." She looked directly in the front row, talking to Charlie and the others. Some of Michael's friends have come from all over, and I think that is a testament to who he is about 10 years later, with your lives on new paths, moving on to a whole new stage of life. So close to the stage, Charlie could see she was about to cry, tears wavering in her eyes, but her voice was steady. "We are grateful you are here. We want to give Michael a legacy with his scholarship, but it is clear that he has already left one, all on his own." Mother grabbed Charlie's hand, and Charlie squeezed back. "I want to say," Joan continued, "something about the families who are not here. As we all know, Michael was not the only child lost during those terrible few months." She read out four more names, two girls and two boys. Charlie glanced at Marla. They all knew there had been other children, but Michael's death had gloomed so great in all their lives that they had never even talked about the other victims. Now Charlie felt a pang of death. No, guilt. To someone, those little girls and boys had been as vital as Michael. To someone, their losses had meant the end of the world. She closed her eyes for a moment. "I can't mourn everyone," she thought. "No one can." John was still talking. "Although their families have moved on to other places, those young boys and girls will always have a place in our hearts. Now I would like to call to speak to a young man who is particularly close to my son. Carlton, if you would." They all watched in surprise as Carlton stood and climbed up behind the podium. Jonah hugged him tightly and stayed close behind him as he pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket. He cleared his throat, looking over the heads of the crowd, then crumpled the paper up again and pulled it back in his pocket. "I don't remember as much about Michael as I should," he said finally. "Too much of those years is a blur. I know we met when we were still in diapers, but I don't remember that, thankfully." There is a soft titter through the crowd. I do know that as far as back as I have memories, Michael is in them. I have remember playing superheroes, drawing, which he was much better than me, and as we got older, I remember, well, playing superheroes and drawing. What I really remember, though, is that my days were always more exciting when he was in them. He is smarter than me. He was the one always coming up with new ideas, new ways to get in trouble. Sorry about those lamps, by the way, Mrs. Brooks. If I had jumped the way Michael said, I probably would only have broken one. Donald laughed, a gulping, desperate sound. Charlie shifted uncomfortably and pulled her hand from Marla's with an apologetically half smile. Their grief naked was too much to watch. It was raw, an open wound, and she could not stand to look. Carlton came back down to sit with them. Michael's grandmother spoke, and then his father, who had recovered enough to share a memory of taking his son to his first art class. He told the crowd about the scholarship for our graduating senior who was demonstrated both excellence and passion in the arts, and announced the winner of the first one, Anne Park, a slight Korean girl who came quickly up to the stage to accept her plaque and hugs from Michael's parents. It must have been strange for Anne, Charlie thought, her honor so overshadowed by its origins, but then she realized it must have known Michael too, however much in passing. After the ceremony, they went to say hello to Michael's parents, hugging them and making sounds of consents. What would you what do you say to someone who has lost a child? Can it be any easier? Can 10 years make a difference? Or do they wake up each morning as fresh with grief as the day he died? With a long cafeteria table by the stage, pictures and cards were collectively slowly people had brought flowers, notes to Michael's parents or to him, things they remembered, things they wished they had said. Charlie went over and browsed through the notes. There were pictures of her and the others as well of Michael. It shouldn't have surprised her. They were all together constantly. As a group or in rotating groups of 2 and 3, she saw herself in the middle of a pose. Michael, John, and she, all covered in mud, with Jessica beside them, with perfectly clean, refusing to go near them. Charlie smiled. That looks about right. And another, a 5-year-old Marla, struggled to support the weight of her newborn little brother. With Lamar peering suspiciously at the tiny thing over her shoulder. Some of Michael's drawings were there too, crayon scribbles professionally and courageously framed. Charlie picked one up, a drawing of what she supposed was a T-Rex stopping through a city. It was actually, she realized now, almost amazing how talented he was. While she and the others were scribbling stick figures, Michael's drawings looked realistic, sort of. That's really good, John said over her shoulder. Charlie is startled. You scared me, she said. Sorry. Charlie looked back at the drawing. However, it was better than she could draw now. Suddenly her chest tightened, gripped with loss and rage. It wasn't just that Michael died young, it was what that truly meant. He had been stopped in his tracks, years, decades of life snatched and torn violently from him. She felt herself well up with youthful indignation and as if she were a child again, wanting only to whine. It's not fair. Taking a deep breath, Charlie set the picture back down on the table and turned away. The gathering was continuing, but she needed to leave. She caught Marla's eye, and Marla, as scarily intuitive as always, nodded and caught Lamar's sleeve. From their various vantage points, they all headed for the parking lot. No one seemed to notice their departure, which made sense, except for Carlton. They're all strangers here. In the lot, they stopped by Marla's car. She had somehow called down a miracle and found a space right next to the school. Can I play my game now? Jason said immediately, and Marla found her keys in her purse and handed them over. Don't drive away, she warned. Suddenly, Marla grabbed her brother and pulled him in close, hugging him to her for a little long moment. Geez, I'm only going for the car, he muttered when she let him go. Yeah, maybe I should let you drive away, she said, giving him a little push. She cleared her throat. So we're going to Freddy's? She said. They all looked at one another. Yeah, Charlie said. I think we should. Somehow, following this, going back to Freddy's seemed like more than the game. It felt right. Let's meet there at sunset, she said. Well, just hey Jessica, can you catch a ride with the guys or something? I'm going to go for a walk. Can you come with us? Marla said. I promised Jason I'd take him to the movies. Charlie headed to the road without wanting to hear the rest of the discussion. A dozen feet from the lot, she realized she had been followed. She turned around. John? Do you mind if I come? You're going to your old house, right? How did you know that? It's the only interesting thing out of this way. Anyway, I went to see my old place too. It was painted blue and there was a garden in the yard. It was weird. I don't know it was even blue when I lived there, but I couldn't remember what color it was supposed to be. Everything's so different. Shirley didn't say anything. She wasn't even sure she wanted John to come with her. Her house, her father's house, it was private. She thought of the first time John had seen the toys, his fascination, and interest that was all his, that nothing to do with pleasing her. She relent. Okay, you can come. Is it? He hesitated. Is it different? It's really not, Shelley said. It wasn't quite true, but she wasn't sure how to explain the thing that had changed. They walked together for the better part of 3 miles, away from town and down old roads, first paved, then gravel. As they neared the place, they left the roads, ascending the steep incline of the hill overrun with brush and trees that still had been trimmed or cut down ages ago. 3 rooftops peeked over the leaves, scattered widely over the hill, but no one had lived in these houses in a long time. At last, they walked up the driveway, and John stopped short, staring up at the house. I thought it'd be less intimidating, he said softly, impatient. Charlie took his arm for a while and pulled him away, leading them around the side of the house. It was one thing for him to be here with her, but she was not quite ready to let someone else inside. She wasn't even sure she wanted to go inside again anyway. He followed her without protest, as if aware that they were in her territory. She would decide where they went. The property was large, more than a lawn. There were woods surrounding the white space of the backyard, and as a child, Charlie had often felt like she was in her own little realm, ruler of as she surveyed. The grass had gone wild, weeds growing fur and up to their knees. They walked the perimeter. John peered into the woods, and Charlie was struck by her childhood fear, like something out of a fairy tale. Don't go into the woods alone, Charlotte, her father warned. It was not sinister, just a parent's warning. Don't get lost. Like telling her to not cross the street without holding someone's hand or to not touch the stove when it was hot. But Charlie took it more seriously. She knew from her storybooks, as all children do, that the woods contained wolves and more dangerous things. She caught John's sleeve. Don't, she said, and he pulled back from the woods, not asking why. Instead, he went to the tree in the middle of the yard and put a hand on it. Remember that tree? He asked, smiling, something a little wicked in his voice. Of course, Charlie said, walking over. It's been there longer than I ever was. But he was looking at her, waiting for more, and suddenly she remembered. She remembered. It had been a sunny day, springtime. They were 6 years old, maybe. John was visiting and they were playing hide and seek, half supervised by Charlie's father, who was in his garage workshop, absorbed in his machines. The door was open so he would notice if someone screamed, but sure of that, the outdoors was their own. John counted to 10, eyes covered, facing the tree that was home base. The yard was wide and open. There were not many places to hide, so Charlie buoyed up at the excitement of the game, dared to hide behind the forbidden edge of the woods, just barely past the tree line. John searched the other places first, behind her father's car, in the corner where one part of the garage jutted out, the space between the porch where our child could just barely crawl. He realized where she must be and Shirley braced herself to run as he began to walk the edges of the yard, darting into the woods and out again, looking behind trees. When at last he found her, she took off, turning across the lawn in a home-based tree. He was just behind her so close He could almost touch her, and she sped on, staying on just out of reach. She hit the tree, almost slamming into it, and John was right behind her, bumping into her a second later, too fast to stop. They were both giggling hysterically, and then they stopped at the same moment, still gasping to catch their breath. Hey, Charlotte, John said, stressing her name in the mocking tone he always used. Don't call me that, Charlotte said automatically. Have you ever seen Grown Ups Kiss? He picked up a stick and started digging in the tree bark. Like he was more interested in that in her answer. Charlie shrugged. Yeah, I guess so. Want to try it? He still wasn't looking at her. His face was streaked with dirt, like it often was, and his hair was sticking out in all directions, a twig cut above his forehead. Gross, Charlie said, wrinkling her nose. Then, after a moment, yeah, okay. Joan dropped the stick and leaned toward her, his hands behind his back. Charlotte closed her eyes, waiting, still not entirely sure what she was supposed to do. Charlotte, it was her father. Charlotte jumped back. John's face was so close to hers that she banged into him with her forehead. Ow, he yelled, clapping a hand to his nose. Charlie's father came around the side of the tree. What are you up to, John? He pried John's fingers away from his nose. You're not bleeding, you'll be fine, he said. Charlotte, closer to the house, please. He then pointed his finger directly them forward. John, it looks like your mom is here anyway. He walked ahead of them toward the driveway where her car had just pulled in. Yeah, okay, John trotted off toward the driveway, turning once again to wave at Charlie. He was grinning like something wonderful had happened, although Charlie was not quite sure what it was. Oh my, Charlie said, now covering her face. Sure, it was bright red when she looked up again. John was grinning that same satisfied 6-year-old grin. You know, my nose still hurts when it rains, he said, touching a finger to it. It does not, Charlie said. She leaned back against the tree. I can't believe you tried to kiss me. We were 6. Charlie stared at him accusingly. Even the littlest heart wanted once, John said in a mock romantic voice, but there was an edge of something real in it, something not well hidden enough. Charlie realized suddenly that he was standing very close to her. Let's see your dad's workshop, John said abruptly, too loud, and Charlie nodded. Okay, she regretted it as she said it. She did not want to open the workshop door. She closed her eyes, still leaning against the tree. She could still see it. It was all she could see when she thought of that place, the twitching, malformed male skeleton in its dark corner, with its wrenching shoulders and its blistering silver eyes. The image welled up in her head until it was all where it was. The memory indicated a cutting anguish, but she did not know who it belonged to the thing, to her father, or to herself. Shirley felt a hand to her shoulder and opened her eyes. It was John frowning at her like he was worried. Charlie, are you okay? No, yes, she said. Come on, let's go see what's in the workshop. It was not locked, and there was no real reason it should be, Charlie thought. Her eyes went first to the dark corner. The figure was not there. There was a withered apron hanging in its place, the one her father had worn for soldering, and his goggles next to it. But there was no sign of that uncanny presence. Charlie should have felt relieved, but she didn't, only a vague unease. She looked around. There seemed to be almost nothing left of the workshop. The benches were there, where her father had assembled and tweaked his inventions, but the materials, the blueprints, and the half-finished robots that were once crammed into every surface had disappeared. Where are they? Had her aunt had carried them to a junkyard to rust and crumble alongside other discarded useless things? Or had her father done it himself, so no one else could have too? The concrete floor was littered here and there with scraps. Whoever had then the clamp did not have been through. Shelley knelt and picked up an oddly shaped scrap of wood, then a small circuit board. She turned it over. Whose brain were you? She wondered. But it did not matter, not really. It was battered and worn. The edged copper tube barely scratched to repair, even if someone wanted to. Charlie, John said from across the workshop. He was in the dark corner of the skeleton and had been there. It had been reached up to touch him, but it's not there. What? Come see what I found. Charlie went. John was standing beside her father's toolbox, and he stepped away as she came over, giving her space. Charlie knelt down before it. It looked as if it had just been polished. It was made of dark stained wood, glossy with some kind of lacquer. She opened it gently. Charlie picked up an olive from the top tray and held it for a moment. Then the rounded wooden handle fit into the palm of her hand as if it had been made for her to use. Not that she even knew how. The last time she had picked it up, she could barely fit her fingers around its base. She picked up the tools for after another, lifted them from their places. The toolbox had wooden spaces carved out of the fit precise shape of each item. All of the tools were polished and clean, the wooden handles smooth and their metal unrusted. They looked as though they had just been used in the morning, wiped down and put away meticulously, like someone still cared for them. She looked at them with a fierce, unexpected joy as if something she had fought for was returned to her. But her joy felt wrong, misplaced. Looking at her father's things set her off balance. Something in the world was not as should be. Seized suddenly with an unfounded fear, she thrust the olive back in its place in the back, dropping it like something burning. She closed the lid, but she did not stand. Memory overtook her and she closed her eyes, not fighting against it. Her feet were wedged in the dirt and two large, clawless hands covered her eyes. Suddenly there was a bright light and Charlie squinted, squirming impatiently to see what was before her. There, three completely and gleaming figures towered over her, motionless, the sun reflecting off every edge and contour. They were blinding to behold. What do you think? She heard the question, but could not answer it. Her eyes hadn't adjusted. The three masses of sound and metal all looked similar in structure, but Charlie had overgrown accustomed to seeing more than was there, imagining the final result. For a long time now, there have been three empty suits, hanging like staircases from a rafter in the attic. Charlie knew that they had a special purpose, and now she understood what it was. Two long beams protruded from the top the head of one of the hulking masses. The head itself was solid and skull-like. The beams looked as if they had been violently thrusted there. That's the rabbit, Shirley squealed, proud of herself. You aren't scared of him? The voice asked. Of course not. He looks like Theodore. Theodore, that's right. The figure in the middle was more clearly rendered. Its face was chiseled, its features distant. It was clearly a bear, and a single metal beam stuck up from the top of its head as well. Charlie was puzzled for a moment, then smiled. For the top hat, she said with confidence. The last form was perhaps the most frightening. A long metal clamp protruding from its empty face, in the place where a mouth might go. It was holding something in a platter, a metal structure. It looked like a jaw. Wires running like shrimp spaghetti up and down the frame, in and out of the sockets. That was scary, she admitted hesitantly. Well, this part, it will look like a cupcake. Her father pressed down on the top, and the jaw snapped shut, making Charlie jump, then giggle. Suddenly, her laughter stopped. She had been so distracted, she had forgotten. I'm not supposed to stand here. I don't stand here. Her hands were trembling. How could she have forgotten? The corner. She looked at the ground, unable to lift her eyes, unable to move. One of her shoes was untied. There was a screw next to her foot and an old piece of tape, up a key with the dirt. There was something behind her. Charlie? It was John. Charlie. She looked up at him.